morning, everybody, and welcome to a cup of grata with a shot of expression and two squirts of reality. Today, I'm just going to say straight up, it's TJ Woodward. Can I just tell you who it is right now? This is one of the most incredible human beings I've ever had. The incredible, I can say incredible so many times. I'm just going to bring him up. He is the creator of conscious recovery. He is the creator of conscious being. He is the creator of love and life and bringing answers to people who have been fighting with trauma and dealing with trauma their entire life. He is going to bring forward today something called Unharmable. TJ always presents us with a question: what if? So what if we bring TJ to the stage? And what if we open our minds today for what's possible, what's fantastic, and realize we are unharmable and understand what that means? Come on, welcome, TJ.
Oh my gosh, Debbie G, so good to see you. I love Debbie Gratitude. What a beautiful name and how perfectly true about you. I love that you embody gratitude in such a beautiful way. So I'm so happy to be here with you once again. It's been a while.
It's been a minute, right?
Yeah.
It has. And right before we start, I'm like, I just want to sit with you. Just sit with your energy. I've had the graciousness of meeting you in person, and I know the warmth and the energy that you exude, and it's awesome.
Oh, thank you. I loved our lunch together in Laguna Beach, one of my favorite places. And I still remember that day being so magical of us just dropping in and being present with one another. Those are the moments that make life so rich for me. So thank you for being you in such a beautiful way.
I love your reflection. You rock my world. I want to jump into this. I want to jump into Unharmable. I love everything that you're doing. However, you have a brand new book out, just came out. It's right behind you to your conscious recovery to there and over there.
I feel like the scarecrow on Wizard of Oz.
He's got a brand new book, everybody. Oh, I have something here, and let me see if I can share it just momentarily. That's okay. I'm not going to. What I'm going to do instead is just allow you to tell us. I was going to show a bit of your excerpt from Unharmable, but I'd like to talk about what Unharmable means, TJ, because it's big.
Yeah, thank you. Right in the beginning of COVID, many of us were going through a lot of transformation.
Yeah.
Some of it was painful. Some of it might have been felt like really joy-filled. My colleague Jeremy Miller and I started a conversation during those early days about how we can be a voice for something other than the division and the finger pointing that we saw really escalating during that time.
Right.
And Jeremy asked me, at that time, I had my 3 books out, and my 3 books are Conscious Being, Conscious Recovery, and Conscious Creation. That one, Conscious Creation.
Conscious Creation.
Yeah, that's the new one. And he asked me, like, what is the core message if you had to distill it into one statement? And of course, as you said, I said, I'd actually like to ask it as a question. And the through line of the 3 books is the question, what if there's a place within you that is unharmed and unharmable? Regardless of what has happened to you, around you, for you, regardless of what you have done in your life and in the world, there is this place that's still precious and whole and complete. And life's journey for most of us is about unlearning all the stuff we've put on top of that and then reconnecting or becoming aware of how we can really return to that place of wholeness. So it really is about returning to wholeness. And as a starting point, knowing that there's that place within us that's unharmable is a complete game changer.
So there's this place inside of us, this magical little place. Is it the childlike place?
I think it's the place that we came in as, right? Whether we call that our God essence, our essential beingness, Buddhists would call it our Buddha nature. There's most spiritual traditions point to this inner life. In Christianity, Jesus said, the Father is within. And the message with that is that God essence, that truth, that beingness is deep within you. And so by the time we, come into this world, we come in as that, a spark of divinity, literally a spark of stardust, right? And then we start getting programmed. So it's the pre-programmed human that before all the messages that we got about limitation, not good enough. If you're a boy, you need to act this way. If you're a girl, you need to act that way. All the messages we receive that keep us, many of us, we separate from that, or at least we believe we separate from that. And then whether it's recovery or therapy or a spiritual journey, it really is about returning to that.
I loved how you broke that down. And that's why I asked that, because I want everyone to understand the depth of what you are referring to. It's not just remembering when we were 2 or 3. It's remembering that from which we came, is what I heard you say.
Absolutely.
It's the return to source, return to that which brings us to our wholeness.
Yeah.
And in that space, we are unharmable.
Right. And when we reach that space, when we use that as a starting point, so at the beginning of the show you said I do a lot of work helping people heal trauma, and in sort of the trauma healing world there is a huge focus on whether the person is ready or not ready to address the trauma, which of course is extremely valid, but most of the time where that lens that we're looking at the person through is the lens of they're broken and they can't handle this healing right now. And what we're saying is, no, underneath all that seems broken, there's actually this place of wholeness, and returning to that, becoming aware of that, spending dedicated time reconnecting with that as the anchor to start doing the healing, it puts us in a really different place. It's like, no, actually, we have this source of energy within us, this source of wholeness that exists. And when we dedicate time to cultivating a relationship with that, we can start to heal all of the things that have happened in our lives that have taken us away from this knowing. And that, like I've said now multiple times, that's the starting point. And when we start there, it's a really different journey. Healing is really different from that place.
I know this is true. What I'd like to unpack is what you just said. When you see somebody, let's just use an addict or somebody who's seeking to survive in the only ways they know how.
Mm-hmm.
What if you could see their beauty? What if you could see the essence of who they are? What if we did that and then that helped them to see that too?
Yeah.
What if this isn't all about how I am seeing them, but rather how that we can help them see love?
That's right.
Being unharmable. Because if you see somebody as broken, they're going to see themselves as broken.
Yeah. Well, they already see themselves as broken.
So they
right?
already do. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we're just adding to that. And I want to be clear about something, because I think sometimes people will hear what we're saying and think we're saying people don't need to be accountable for their behavior. That's not it at all. Right. But if we're starting from, oh my gosh, I'm broken and I've done all these things, and how am I going to ever clean this up? And I have so much shame, and my family is really tired of me, and my spouse is about to leave me, and my boss is about to fire me. I mean, the weight of that and that downward spiral, we're saying let's interrupt that and say, let's access that place of beauty within you as the starting point, and then we can start to look at it in a different way. And, the observer has a profound effect. We know now quantum mechanics is showing us that when we're looking for a particular outcome in an experiment, if you will, we have a much higher probability of seeing that manifest. And so life is an experiment. So if I'm saying, oh my gosh, this person is broken, they're damaged, I can't believe they're addicted, we're just adding to that. And so to be able to see them in a really different way is really a profound shift. Someone can start to see for themselves that preciousness within them that they've most likely abandoned years ago.
Gosh, that's beautiful. I'm staying with it, and knowing that I know that there's so many people need to hear that. If you've lost that spark within you, you think you did because you can't see it.
Yeah.
There's ways to get it back. Let's this is get some heavy stuff. This is really heavy stuff. Think about that, everyone. I love how you said that you're not removing accountability or responsibility. I'd like to also unpack that in just a moment, we'll talk about accountability, because for me, true accountability and responsibility and authenticity has been my healing. So I want to talk about that. But for a second, what I'd love for everybody to do, as we're watching, because my shows get a little heavy sometimes, we talk about tough stuff. We're just going to do smile, and we're just going to do a little chakra shake. Ready? Chakra shake. Ready? Let's do it. We're going to shake your chakra. And remember, TJ just said you're unharmable. Find that beauty within you. Yeah, this stuff is tough, but it's what you got to do. That's what it works at. Just shake it. You guys know that by smiling, you're releasing dopamine. Getting it into our vibration, lifting it up. Who are you grateful for today? All right, let's talk about accountability in the world of I'm unharmable and authenticity. What does that look like?
Well, it's really interesting because there are layers to that question and then layers of different answers, right? So for a moment, let's bookmark or kind of set aside accountable for my behavior, which is really important. But many people start there and then we end up adding shame to the shame, and shame doesn't heal shame. That's not how
it does it not. No, thank you.
Right. So we're going to bookmark that for a moment. We're going to say the number one most important thing I can be accountable for is this knowing of who I really am. And when I say who I really am, I mean that for every living being on planet Earth and beyond. It's once I'm accountable, and it might be a really interesting word because when we think about accountability, like you need to be accountable for your behavior, young man. That's what I heard when I was a young man, which was true, by the way, because I was doing all sorts of absurd things. Because I believed I was broken, I was acting broken in the world. But we're going to start with the only surrender, or the main surrender, because we hear that a lot in the recovery world. You need to surrender, right? The number one surrender we need to do, or that I'm going to invite us to do, is to surrender the belief in our brokenness and surrender to the source energy that we are. And if that sounds esoteric at all, I'm going to just say it in a really simple way. When I believe I'm broken, I act broken in the world. When I reconnect with my wholeness, I start to act like a whole and complete person. It becomes profoundly simple. And then it's not esoteric at all. It's very practical, actually. And so the accountability for the behavior, as we anchor in the unharmability, then we can say, oh my gosh, and this is true for me, and I'm going to invite people to ask if it's true for you. I looked at my behavior and I looked at the way I was harming myself and others, which have been plenty in my life. And I discovered something that was so simple and yet for me really powerful. 100% of the time I caused harm to myself and others, it was when I deeply believed I was flawed. When I was loving and kind and offering healing to the people in the world, it was because I believed I was whole and complete, that I had this place of infinite possibility within me. So again, it becomes profoundly simple. Which one of those do I want to feed and water? And many of the therapeutic models, many of the recovery models say, let's look at that behavior. And they don't necessarily say your bad behavior. Some do, but really there's a sense that, oh my gosh, it's so heavy because I've done all this blankety blank 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 stuff to harm myself and others, and I need to heal that, or I need to fix that, or I need to correct it. And what we're saying is, let's start with knowing the why of that. The reason I acted broken is I felt broken. And then there's a shame spiral. I believe I'm broken. I do these things that confirm that, and I'm in the downward spiral. We interrupt that. We interrupt today's programming to reconnect with our essence, our beingness, that pre-programmed human. And then I can say, of course I did that, right? Of course I had an addiction. Of course I had these relationships that were volatile. We start to have compassion for ourselves. And sometimes, because we're swimming in this consciousness of competition. And, we even say to people, she lost her battle with cancer. Like we're even battling that. It's like, why are we battling? Let's take a breath and start to have compassion. And sometimes people think, well, if I'm compassionate for myself or for my loved ones, then they're not going to be accountable for their behavior. I'm not going to be accountable. It's actually the opposite. When I start with that, then I can say, oh my gosh, I have compassion for the place within me that did all of that. Yes, I need to clean it up, but not from a place of I've been bad, but from a place of, well, yeah, I believed I was broken and I was acting that way.
It's just brilliant. It's actually so simple, as you said. So simple. I was always curious, like, whatever stopped me was always fear. Was always, what was I so afraid of? The emotion, like it's going to eat me up, and like the emotion is a big emotional monster, and it's going to come and eat me when I take responsibility for the fact that I love how you said this. Of course I caused issues. Of course I have dysfunction. It reminds me, of course I'm an adult 56-year-old woman working on my trauma.
Mm.
Of course I am. Of course we've all been through something. And of course we've all tried something to feel okay. I mean, I think isn't that it? It's just you just want to feel normal, okay, whatever that might be. Why do you think people are doing it? Why are they seeking outside of themselves all the time instead of doing this very simple thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's in conscious recovery, which is my recovery model. I call addiction a brilliant strategy because it, like you said, like basically when I feel broken, life is really painful, and I'm in these relationships that seem broken. My job seems to keep confirming this belief I'm broken, and I find relief in the form of cocaine or find relief in the form of, it really doesn't matter what it is. It's like, oh, I feel relief. And really what I think we're seeking, the deeper seeking, is seeking to return to that place of wholeness. And sometimes drugs or alcohol or a lot of different behaviors, shopping, it doesn't matter, sex, there are lots of things we can use. And it's like, oh, there's a momentary sense of who I really am. I remember the first time there's certain drugs I did, and I was like, I felt that place within me. I felt that unharmable place. And, it wasn't, we could say it's an artificial, sense of it, but the truth is it did help me access that. I mean, it didn't keep doing that, right? I kept chasing that. And then it was like for me, it was a whole year of chasing that. And then it started really, not serving me. It's not like it kept being brilliant, but it started as that. And then that as a starting point, we can start to look at who am I really? And if I put this substance down, what comes up? And I love that you address like the idea of feeling this stuff. A lot of us have been running from our feelings for years or decades. So recovery or the spiritual journey really is about this thawing out and allowing ourselves to feel. It's such an important part of the journey.
Thawing out. Has there ever been anything better, you guys? Thawing out.
Yeah, I mean, I felt frozen.
Well, that is what it's like, because you're like frozen in that state. You're just so frozen by life, so frozen by my observation of it and my reaction to it, and the way it felt within my body. It's so beautiful to not have to be there, or to have the tools to relax into it and thaw out.
Thaw out. Yeah.
Oh, that's like a shirt. Thaw out. Thaw out. That is the best thing TJ, you rock. Everybody heard it right here, right now.
Well, I mean, if you think about, we talk about the fight, flight, or freeze response.
Yeah.
And freeze, it's like many of us, and that was really my go-to. From a very early age, I would kind of freeze. I would go isolate. I would close my door in my bedroom. I would go into fantasy. So all of this became an automatic or an unconscious response when things got difficult in life. So yeah, for me, really thawing out and letting myself start to feel. And then, I think you said it so beautifully. It's like, oh my gosh, I can feel this, and I didn't die, right? I've been running from these feelings that I thought were going to kill me. And the truth is, the running from the feelings literally almost killed me in my addiction. Literally. This is not like, oh, it might have, I mean, I almost died a couple of times in my addiction. So the idea that the feelings are going to kill me, the opposite is actually true. It's in the not feeling that literally almost caused my death. And, luckily I walked through that and started to thaw out, which, for me took many years, and I want to say it doesn't have to take years or decades to do this. We can have an instantaneous awareness of who we are, right? So it's both and. It might, it can take a lifetime and it can happen in an instant.
Okay, so this is super exciting news. There's a lot of people that think it took so long to get here. It's going to take so long to get where I want to go. Let's take, there was a time I weighed 300 pounds. And I'm going to tell you, sometimes things seem so big and so overwhelming. It doesn't really matter the circumstances. It really matters about the small steps that we start taking to see things differently. And what you're encouraging people to do right now is to do that, but in a simplistic way that doesn't have to take years. Do you mind showing your book, your brand new one?
Oh, the new one.
Conscious Creation.
This is Conscious Creation right here. We're working on new covers for everything, but this is Conscious Creation as it stands now. It actually came out a little while ago, but I'm just continuing to let people know about it. It really is about how we shift our life from unconscious creation to conscious creation, based on a Carl Jung quote that I love. And the quote is so simple and I love it. Until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our life and we will call it fate. So if we've been sort of unconsciously creating, and why do I keep re-experiencing these situations over and over and over again? If I hear myself saying, why do I keep attracting unavailable people? Why is my boss so toxic? Some things that are really popular in our culture now. Or I thought this person was going to be different. I thought this job was going to be different. That is an indicator that we're unconsciously creating our life based on the core false beliefs we've been carrying and the frequency. So this book is really intended to say, how do we move it out of the unconscious, bring it up into the light to heal it so that we can start to make conscious choices for our life. And for me, it's just, life-changing. These principles, these practices are life-changing. And, I've been in some really dark places in my life, and getting through those dark places by using these principles and these practices has become really just the greatest gift of my life to share with the world.
Well, I know from personal experience that the things you speak of with conscious recovery, I've watched and observed.
Yeah.
Y'all look at, treatment center after treatment center after treatment center, person after person that their life has literally been completely transformed because they embrace conscious recovery. They embrace conscious creation, conscious being. They embrace this, like, as you said, the new practices and the principles. I want to talk about a couple of the principles really quickly. But first, let's say hello to our darling Saf Buxy.
Oh my goodness, Saf. Hello.
Hi, over in the UK. Hello, Nicole. It's nice to see you. And those watching, thank you so much for being here. If you want to find any of TJ's work, you can go to tjwoodward.com, and you can also go to wholehearted.org.
Yes.
Wholehearted.org has, oh my gosh, wholehearted.org is crazy. I'll put it up on the screen here in a minute, because there are the best workshops from you on there.
Thank you.
Like, you can literally go on there. Y'all, you can go in there and get some good doses of TJ. Like, you cannot imagine. It's seriously incredible. You can go to YouTube, and you put out so much information everywhere. And I want to just appreciate all that you give everyone, because it's so big. But yeah, you're helping a lot of people there.
Thank you. It's, I came to a point in my life when and thank you for mentioning wholehearted.org. They're incredible. I'm on there along with Gabor Mate, Marianne Williamson, and I have some stuff together on there. There's some great Mark Lundholm, who is the most hilarious and profound
he's great
comedian. He's now my friend, but it's like, he's just hilarious, but he also delivers a really profound message. So wholehearted.org is just an amazing resource. But when I was around 40, Debbie, I had a moment, and I don't know why somehow Carl Jung is so present today, but I think he said we spend the first 40 years developing an ego and the next 40 dismantling it.
Oh, dear God. If that isn't the truest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Isn't that the truth, right? So,
Oh, Lord.
right.
Yes.
At 40, I was like, there has to be more than this. And I was in long-term recovery at age 40. I got sober when I was 20. I had been on a spiritual path for many years, and I loved my life. I seemed very successful on the outside in many ways, but on the inside, there was a yearning for something more. And I had a pivotal moment where I said yes to, what really matters to me, and how can I be part of using this personality that I've been given, which is extremely extroverted, to deliver a message that can help as many people as possible. Not in the I need to be a savior, not the Statue of Liberty complex, bring me your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free, but in the way of like, this really changed my life, and I was at a couple points not sure if I wanted to stay on the earth, and it's like, how can I not share that with the world? And I get to use the personality I've been given, that could also be called the ego, and just running with it. And, as many shows as possible, as many stages as possible, because there's nothing greater. And Debbie, I know, there's nothing greater than watching a human being light up again, when they've been so, to see the energy and to see someone believe so much in their own brokenness, and then just have that moment where they're like, oh, I'm worthy. I am love. I am lovable. There is nothing like that. No money, no drug, nothing's better than that.
Nothing.
So that's become my life's work. And I said yes. And I've been doing this now for, I'm 58 now, almost 59. So for the last 18, 19 years, I've been on this drive, if you will, of delivering this message wherever possible.
And I'm super grateful for it. Let me tell y'all, I've watched firsthand with my own son what conscious recovery can do. And he went back to conscious recovery recently.
Oh,
Okay. Back into his practices and getting back into those principles, And the part about this that's so brilliant is that everyone is has been addicted to something. I have looked for many ways to get a dopamine hit to control just to control my nervous system.
yeah.
My nervous system gets out of whack, and it's an amazing experience when you start realizing you can actually control all these things. You can actually use tools and practices. And that's why I want to talk about some of these tools and practices. Let's talk about something when our nervous system does get out of whack, or we are feeling in that overwhelm. What do we do?
Well, a lot of the practices that I offer in conscious recovery, the conscious recovery is broken down into three parts: the roots of addiction, breaking the cycle of addiction, and then a return to wholeness. And we've kind of been talking about that return to wholeness part. So we can go back and look at like how we actually heal the underlying root causes. And the word addiction might not work for everyone, but as you said, I think if we're all honest, we can take a look and say, ask the question, has there ever been a time I've sought someone or something outside of myself to try to assuage the pain that was within? And in that way, we can say, I think we've all had some sort of addiction. If I keep doing it, like, where's that line? We could debate what addiction is, but let's just say the outer focused life. And so conscious recovery starts with looking at how you heal those, and then breaking the cycle of addiction starts with safety, inner safety, reconnecting with our true nature, finding community. That's a big tool in the very beginning. And then the big thing that I guess I'll focus on right after creating safety, there's a whole chapter on unlearning. And we've talked about this a little bit, but it's unlearning the ideas and beliefs that we've created about ourselves that have kept us limited. Now, to be clear, I'm not just saying change your thinking, because nothing could be truer and sometimes less useful than to say you shouldn't be thinking that about yourself. Yes, but I am. What do I do with it? Right. So we talked about it at the top of the show. Question, question, question. I often say there are three steps: awareness, awareness, and awareness. But we could say there are three ways to heal: question, question, and question. Where did this belief originate? How do I feel when I believe it? What's the energy that's in my body that's associated with that thought? not from a place of I shouldn't be thinking this, but from a place of compassion. Like, yeah, when I was 7 years old, I made huge decisions. I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, and I'm not lovable. Those decisions weren't based in the mind because my mind wasn't even developed yet. I had a very, young mind. It really was more of an energy I took on. It was like I was absorbing the shame of the people around me. And then I started walking around believing I was broken, and I just kept re-experiencing it. One of your favorite tools, of course, is gratitude. It's something I focus on in conscious recovery. When I'm in the frequency of gratitude, I don't have to pretend like something's not happening. Because a lot of times I think some people use gratitude as like, oh, let me pretend like there's not pain in the world. Let me just be grateful. And that might be a beginning stage of it. Because, some of us, it's like Velcro to the negativity. My mind was like Velcro, like, oh, let me look for everything horrible in the world and focus on it.
I love that. His mind was Velcro to negativity. Anybody ever feel that way? Keep going. I love this. Is so good.
And so we're looking at it in a way of like gratitude as a frequency. It's like, let me be gratitude in the midst of everything. I think sometimes when we say we create our reality, there was a little thread on social that I read today, and someone said we create our reality based on our perspective. And someone said, well, I don't really believe that completely because there's still war, there's still crime, there's still people that get, violated. They went into all this. I'm not saying we're going to pretend like none of that is existing. I'm going to ask the question, what gets created when I say how horrible it is, or what might get created, or what does get created when I say, let me be the essence of gratitude in this. I can actually start to help the world in that way instead of being at odds with it. So, I could go on and on about the different practices, but those are a couple that came to mind.
Well, I love it because you brought up gratitude.
I always bring up gratitude with you.
I'm just like, it just makes me want to go. Just getting into some gratitude here. What he's talking about is grateful beingness. What he's talking about is your connection to source and being connected to all that is. What he's referring to is not saying, oh, I'm in gratitude, so what you're saying is I have grateful beingness because I am connected to source. And that therefore leaves me in deep appreciation of all that is. You see, because when we can appreciate the things that don't feel good, it changes what doesn't feel good. And what you're saying is because you were Velcro to negativity by using your tool of appreciation and gratitude to shift, but it's not just how we see it, it's how we feel it.
Exactly.
How we observe it and how we respond.
Yes. And I love the quote that's so simple. Life is 10% what happens and 90% how we respond. And really, it's really more, I think Debbie and I would probably say it's 90% how we're being with it. Being the key word, not necessarily the doing. So it's not like I'm going to react or respond to this. It's like in the midst of this, I am going to know who I am. And the more I know who I am, the more I can see that for others. And that's how we could imagine a world where right now, everyone paused, everyone's watching this, the entire world. And Debbie and I said, just for a moment, take a deep breath and remember who you are. Remember that place within you before all the pain and the shame and the trauma. Remember that sense of wholeness or that space of wholeness within you. Imagine what happens in the world instantaneously. And, of course, people will say, well, that's very Pollyanna. And I will say, well, thank you. Because the story of Pollyanna is she looked for the great in all things, right? And, I remember Mr. Rogers, we hear this story a lot, but Mr. Rogers, when he would watch horrible things on TV with his mother, she would say, look for the helpers. There's always helpers in the midst of it. Look for the rescuers. Look for the people who are bringing love to this situation. So we're not going to pretend like there aren't things in the world that are painful, but we're going to say there's a difference between pain and suffering. We can actually be love in the midst of even something that might seem difficult. That's why I love my work with addiction. People say, how do you do that work? People die all the time. Yes, you are correct about that. And there are people who light up. There are people who become whole again. There are people who remember who they are. There are people who heal the deep, generational trauma that happens, within their family. So there's love everywhere if I'm willing to look. And to be more accurate, there's love everywhere if I'm willing to be that love.
Oh, Drop that mic. If y'all heard that, right? If you're willing to be loved, you just said the most important thing of all. I think I've had a lot of expectations in my life, TJ, but I wasn't willing to show up and be that first.
Right.
And how did I really expect that it was going to come back if I wasn't willing to do it?
Yeah.
Your encouragement to look within, to use that awesome tool of questioning, curiosity, asking yourself why, whatever word you need to use, because word association can really mess with us.
Yeah.
And this is why it's so important. Whatever the tool that you need to use to look inside, to ask those important questions. And then what you do is you get a book like Conscious Recovery and you sit with it and you start doing the work. You aren't going to die. I'm still here. TJ, I'm telling you. I'm like, y'all aren't going to die. You're still breathing. And sometimes you got to change that color glasses that you're wearing.
Yeah.
All of these things are so doable. But when we are in the midst of pain, or let's go into dealing with somebody with an active addiction, you know, and loving them as deeply as possible.
Yeah. And, you and I think in past shows have talked about, the bold statement I'll make that tough love is not love because the
Oh,
two of those don't live together. Now, I want to be clear. When we say love the person where they're at, that doesn't necessarily mean I want to give them keys to my car or access to my home or my life. But the sense of loving them instead of judging them has a profound effect. And I want to have compassion. A lot of mothers, I think of mothers with their teenage children, and they're literally afraid every single day they might not come home. We honor that pain. And it's really easy to say, well, I need to set a boundary. I need to cut off my love. And that's the old model. Like
it's
that's
a
the
way old model, way old.
model of interventions where you get everyone together and say, we all love you, but if you don't do what we say, we're going to stop loving you.
Because you're not living life like I think you should.
Right. And I want to be clear about something, because
Yes.
this is the important thing.
Right.
Which is a greater change agent, criticism or love? If you, I remember my nephew when he was 2 or 3, and he would have an intense emotional experience that we've labeled as a meltdown or a temper tantrum, which isn't really what's happening. They're having this intense emotion. And I remember if I would get down on his level, sit down on the floor with him and just be present with him and say nothing, he would start to come back to himself. But a lot of us, what we get is like, you shouldn't be crying. Don't do that. Go to your room. So there's really early messages around judgment or criticism as a way to help someone change. And a lot of times I believe I can't love myself and I can't love this person with an addiction because I don't want to condone what they're doing. We've been programmed, and it's not that that's wrong. It's just that it doesn't work. It's not working, right? When we look at addiction and we think, I think the statistics are about 10% of people who have addiction recover. We have to ask ourselves what we can do different or better. Not that we're doing it wrong, but like, how can we look at this in a new and different way? And I know that love has healed me, and judgment was keeping me stuck. I had so much inner self-criticism and so much inner judgment. And I found myself in models where people were judging me too. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's not healing. Back to our statement, shame doesn't heal shame.
What a beautiful circle of love. Shame does not heal shame. I am so guilty of some of those things in my life with my kids.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that every single solitary thing that you've said is on point. It's 100% real and true. Here's the exciting part. Y'all can change it. See, that's the deal. The thing is that we can love each other through the madness. We can, you know what, TJ, I had a really perfectly imperfect human day yesterday. Had a lot of feels going on. Because in life, that's being human. That's just being human. And sitting with myself and loving myself through that is what I needed to be doing. And instead, I was doing some lashing. I just want to be honest. I was kind of doing some lashing out. I wanted to find somebody to blame.
Yeah.
Yes, I really was pissed off and I wanted somebody. And my husband's really easy to target. I want to tell you all, this is real stuff. I feel embarrassed saying this, literally, because it's embarrassing, you know. And then I come on here and I want to talk about gratitude and stuff. So I want to tell you guys something. I had to make an amends with my own, with him, and with also looking at myself and being compassionate, as TJ just said. As I looked in it within and I said, what is going on within you? I was scared. I was scared. And I wanted to channel that energy of fear because I didn't want it to be there. But I'm here, I'm still alive, everybody. I didn't die. I want you to, I'm here. Here's the difference, is that I can today look at myself and say, it's okay to have a meltdown. It was very overwhelming. It was true. It was overwhelming at the time. I felt these things. But what wasn't okay is the way that I channeled it. And being able to take that pause and sit with yourself is just the most brilliant thing. And that's what you've suggested today, is to just breathe and remember the essence of who that you are. There's so much in the mess, you guys, for you to see about yourself, for you to learn how to love you so fully. Because if you can love you in a big fat mess, you can love anybody in a big fat mess. I love big fat messes because you know what? There's only one way to go from the bottom, TJ.
and what I love about what you're saying is, I think what we're emerging into now is people are looking for authenticity and vulnerability. The era of the spiritual teacher, if you will, the one that's highly evolved and doesn't have any, issues on planet Earth, I think those days are waning. I'm thinking about my good friend Temple Hayes, who would be an amazing guest for your show. I connect you to. And she talks about, am I coming from my woundology, right? And any of us at any moment can slip into the woundology and then be reactive from that place. The key is to notice that, to be aware of that, and to catch ourselves and to return. When we talk about anger, for example, we send people to anger management, and the message is, you shouldn't be angry. You need to learn to manage that. And instead, we want to say, what is this anger managing? So we tell someone to count to 10, but do we instruct them what to do during that count to 10, right? So we pause, we reflect, we allow ourselves to feel, we see what's present in our body. We don't go into the story about it, because as Debbie said, let me tell you, my mind will always be seeking for whose fault is it? And it's like, and that can change over time, but really it's more about my relationship with it that has changed. So it's like, oh, isn't it interesting my mind is doing that, right? Because if I believe I am my thoughts, then I start to build a coalition of people who agree with me. They're called political parties, they're called religions sometimes. And then we start to build these different camps. And all of that stems from what Debbie so authentically and with her vulnerability shared, that at any moment, I can tap into my woundology and start to be reactive. And if I'm not aware of that, I can be in that cycle. And that's the ripple effect. That's what's happening on the planet. That's what's been happening throughout the centuries. But what has also been happening is people healing that and being love in the midst of it, and dedicating time to meditation and healing the planet. So it's all happening. All the frequencies are available. The question is, what do I want to tune into? Like a radio dial. I remember being a little kid and thinking, where does the music come from? Like it's floating somewhere, and we tune it in just a certain way and we get a certain song. That's life. That's consciousness, right? I tune into a certain frequency, and that's the song I hear. It's the song I'm singing. It's the song I'm experiencing. Everywhere I go, I keep hearing this same song. Tune into a different frequency. Oh my gosh, there's love everywhere. Who knew? Who knew there was love everywhere? It's all around.
It really is.
It's all around and it starts within. And the more I can have compassion for myself, the more I can have compassion for someone else in that moment of reactivity, right? If someone's, we call it a button getting pushed or a wound getting touched. I don't like the word trigger because it really is like you triggered me, but no, you touched something. And that is getting touched because it's wanting to heal. And if I choose to be in reactivity with it, it's not going to heal. Because then I'm going to be like, you're the narcissist, you're the problem.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And again, it's not to pretend like there's not stuff happening in the world or there aren't leaders that we might be able to label as this or that. It really is, how do I heal here, return to my wholeness, reconnect with my unharmability, be that in the world, like the lighthouse that stands there shining.
Oh, that felt so good. Everybody, if you feel good, that felt so good. I want to share how I went to my husband and said, I apologize for my overwhelm and my misdirection. Truly wasn't personal. I have fear. And I said, I can do a much better job of working on my nervous system and my overwhelm than I have been. And I'm sorry that I hurt you. There's no excuses. I broke the egg. Y'all understand? I broke the egg. Doesn't mean I'm beating myself up. It means that I'm fully, I love too much to do that to myself or to anybody else. It's so important, all of these things, to realize that why you do things, the why you're in overwhelm, the why we feel sad, the why, the observation. I love it shouldn't be, so therefore I'm upset.
Right. I think someone said the greatest way to know that you're going to suffer is to say this shouldn't be happening. Right. She shouldn't have said that. He shouldn't do that. I shouldn't be so this or that. All those shoulds and shouldn'ts. It's like, yeah, that's the suffering. And that's the difference between pain and suffering. Someone can say something, touches a wound. When I'm in a moment where I'm the most conscious, I can say, ooh, oh, there's that wound. Hello, wound. Yeah, let me tend to you. Right. And in my less conscious moment, it's like, how dare you say that? Right. You shouldn't say that. Right. That's not. And I want to be clear. It's not, we're not saying stay in some kind of relationship, whether it's work or friends or that's abusive. That's not what we're saying. But we end up thinking it's the other person's fault. And when we're in blame, whether it's blame of ourselves or blame of someone else, we're just in a low frequency. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing better about being a teenager than an adult or an older person than a younger person. It's just a different stage of our development. The same is true with consciousness. Oh, look, I'm blaming right now. I'm just in this kind of low frequency. Nothing wrong with that. But like, what gets created when I stay there? Well, it creates separation. I don't feel great about myself. I feel ill, right? So it's like,
Totally.
let me raise that, not because I want to be a good person, but because I want to be more loving to myself and the world. I want to have and experience more love. Sometimes we talk for an hour about something and it's just so simple. Who do I want to be in the world and what do I want to experience? And, my one of my teachers at Unity Institute, Paul Hasselbeck, he would say, I call my spirituality, I am accountable.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I'm accountable for my experiences. I'm accountable for tending to myself. I'm accountable for my own evolution. I'm accountable, not I'm blaming myself. He didn't say I am critical, right? No. It's like, no, I'm accountable that I'm creating this. And what a beautiful thing. Because if I'm creating what I don't love, I can easily shift to creating what I do.
Yeah, right. Totally. That's exactly it right there. If you're not loving it, shift it. It's really simple. Go sit and thaw for a while. Go do you, do you for a minute. Don't, whenever relationships are the best place to heal. And you know why? Because when I stayed single for all that time, I just was in my little Pollyanna, everything's hunky dory.
Right. Right.
Totally. Oh my God. Right. You can really, it's like, uh, oh, I get to face all kinds of, how do I manage my human beingness?
Yeah.
How do I manage this person, Debbie? And we've given a lot of tools today on how to do that. And I want to thank you, TJ. You're such an incredible, amazing human being. Besides the fact that you just show up, and that right there in itself is the beauty. I'm
Oh,
going to shift for a second. I want to
okay.
talk to everybody.
Awesome.
As you all know, I have the Gratitude Ranch here in Alamosa, Colorado. And TJ, you are so invited. We'll talk about this shortly. Tickets don't go on sale until May 12th, 2024. The event is World Peace Day,
Mm.
starting 9/21, the Symphony of Gratitude on 9/22, and the workshops are on 9/23. Here's a little video of the property, and it's going to be fun. So that is the Gratitude Gala Jamboree that we are having here in Alamosa. We're actually putting a peace pole in and having a ceremony. We have a lot of people coming from all over the place, and it's going to be a great, great adventure in September. So, without further ado, let's thank TJ Woodward for showing up today. TJ, what would you like to leave everybody with? What's sparking your life today? What's sparking the gratitude? What are you excited about?
You know, what I always like to say in closing is some variation of the same thing because I think it's the simplest message. And that message is to say to anyone watching right now, and this is the spark that is really driving me always, and that is if no one's told you today, there is this place within you that's unharmed and unharmable. So, regardless of what's happened, regardless of what you've done, and regardless of your current life circumstances, you are a whole and precious being. And at this moment, you have access to that. Take a deep breath, reconnect with your true nature, and just go out in the world and shine. As I said, life is a great experiment. So I'm inviting you to experiment with gratitude, experiment with this beingness that Debbie and I are talking about. Be that in the world just for 24 hours. See what happens. For the next 24 hours, if you catch yourself saying, oh, why does this keep happening? Thank you for sharing mine. I know who I am. Why is it? Come back to center and keep on shining. So that's my message.
It's beautiful. Come back to
Thank
center. Keep on shining. Remember, you are unharmable. You know, TJ, my words of gratitude are simply that everybody, please go buy his books, and I'm going to be grateful.
you.
I'm grateful in advance for the fact that y'all are going to go get Conscious Recovery. It's an incredible, incredible book. Incredible. I want to read your next. Actually, you have them on audio.
I have them on audio and
Yes, I know
conscious
you do.
creation. I think conscious creation, by the time I did my third book, I think my narration skills were the best. So I would recommend if you're going to do audio, do conscious creation.
I'm going to be listening to the audio on my trip to Southern California soon. Absolutely. I love to listen to audiobooks. You guys, really seriously, go to tjwoodward.com. Please make sure that you go to wholehearted.org. If you have somebody who's struggling with addiction, mental health, behavioral health, anything of that nature, please send them to tjwoodward.com. Send them to wholehearted.org. Okay, please. This is where the true healing is at. This is the real stuff. TJ, this is life-changing work. Y'all got to do it though. That's the thing. You're not going to read the book and then I'll put the book down and go, well, I read the book, but nothing happened. I don't understand this. I read your book. It didn't change me. Because y'all got to do the work. Remember that. TJ, you are an incredible, incredible person on this planet.
Thank you.
I adore you. Have a great rest of your weekend. Bye, everybody.